Dala Dhawa Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Geng Tarpa Dan Tam Che Kempe Bardu Jopra Jeba Tam Jege Sa Jebe Manankada Nampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dhan Ten Tung Ya Dan De Nerdo Lana Me Payang Thapara Sube Chanchu Rinpo Je Tom Pra Dala Thangwa Jebe Dai Nobar Jebe Gek Tarpa Dan Tam Je Kembe Pardu Jopra Jeba Tam Jege Su Jebe Mhanang Kadang Nampe Senchen Tam Je Dewa Dan Den Tunga Dan De Nudu Lana Me Paya Dhabara Sobe Chanchu Rinpo Je Dobra Jan Dala Dhawa Jebe Dai Nobar Jebe Gek Tarpa Dan Tam je kembe paridu jobra jeba tham jegi su jebe ma nang ka dang nambe sen chen tam je de wa tham ten dung ya dang zhe ne de la na me pa yang tam pra so be chan chu ren po je do bra jo da la dang wa jebe da no pa jebe ke Tarpa dhan tham je kempe paradu jobra jeba tham je ge su jebe ma nang ka dang nyampe sen chen tham je dewa dhan ten dung ya dhan je nu du la na me pa yang tham pra zo be chan chu ren po je do par je de je de sang ma ge ge par de long a ye sum ge wa la ko ma shi par de long a ye sum ge wa la ko du de ne sun de ne ma chan ta sam ge par de long a ye sum ge wa la ko san je cho dan so ge cho nam la chan chu par de da ne gyab su che da ge jin so ge be so nang ge Jala penche sanje drupra sho sanje chodang soke chonam la chancho bardu dhane kyapsu che dhage jinso gebe sonam ke Jala penche sanje drupra sho sanje chodang soke chonam la chancho bardu dhane kyapsu che dhage jinso gebe sonam ke Jala penche sanje drupra sho Kadang nyampe sanchen tamche dewa dang dewe gendan dambra gyurje dunya dang dunya ki gyudang dewa gyurje dunya mepe dewa dang me dewa gyurje nering chadang nidang dewe dang nyong la nebra gyurje monang kadang nyampe sanchen tamche dewa dang dewe gendan dambra gyurje dunya dang dunya ki Yudan Java Girje, Dunya Mebe Dewa Dame Dewa Girje, Niding Chadang Nidang Java Tang Nyong La Nebra Girje, Wanang Kadang Nyampe, Senchen Tamche Dewa Dang, Dewa Gindan Dambra Girje, Dunya Dang Dunya Gi Gyudang Java Girje, Dunya Mebe Dewa Dame Dewa Girje, Niding Chadang Nidang Java Tang Nyong La Nebra Gyurje. All the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you, lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. By the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear vividly in my mind, with as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands. I prostrate to all you conquerors, in each atom of Buddhas, numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way. With infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors, and praise all of you gone to bliss with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps, and superior incense, I offer to you, conquerors, with excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood powder, heap high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged. I offer to you, conquerors, these vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you, conquerors, with the power of conviction and noble deeds. I prostrate and offer to all you, conquerors, well, the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the tender actions and the heirs of the Buddhas. Solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lambs of the worlds of the tender actions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexcelled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons there are atoms in the world for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, fog, continent, sun, and moon. I visualize as a Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the gurus who possess the three kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings. With my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence, please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment. Whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate it to complete, O Bodhi. Om Guru Deva Dhaki Nirena Mandala Pratecha Soha. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Dorje Janjen Dele Naroda, Mami Dapo Padruji, Dengun Kandin Sundin Zavela, Mesha Sajula, Mayidam Jogan Asuwa, Devsa Daji Jelo. Tombe Zambe Gera Petun Sungan La Kya, Tombe Gyawan Doji Jang Ba, Jiten Kumpo Shabadu, Tatu Zange Gyole Me, Jinjilo Jidu Jeje, Nengen Mungas and Negan Zembro Degu Dobra Jelo. Jin the Chansa, Pema Gesa Tompola. Yasen Jogging Wagimia Bema Junation Shudu, Guru Gandru Mambu, Guru Gigi Jessada, the Gagin Jil of Jesus of Guru Bemas de Oh, man, Jogging Gibudane, the Susan Jagunjing of 1 year, Ransen Jogung and Zunton Zeva, so well a measure the soul. Good morning, everyone. I was having some technical issues again. It seems like the power cord adapter that I have is not strong enough, so that when I try to plug in an external uh, camera or to plug in an exterior microphone to make the video and the audio quality better. The those things get automatically disabled, but it's mainly this regular, apparently, adapter is not strong enough. Problem seems to come and go, and this morning it came. So anyway, sorry for the slight delay. Anyway, good morning, good evening, everyone, and thank you for all the wishes. Yes, April 26th is birthday, so I was told. I don't really remember, but I trust my parents that they weren't lying. So it's good to be here, good to be alive, and so yeah, and wonderful that I'm able to spend this morning with all of you studying the Bodhicharyavatara. Recently, when I was in Malaysia, the group in Malaysia, some friends did an early wish of happy birthday, and I took the opportunity to slightly rant about a trend that has turned up among Chinese Buddhists. Which is, I have seen that in recent years, it has sort of become the trendy Buddhist thing, at least among the Chinese community in Malaysia, to refer to their own birthdays with this new name, well, new to me, which in Mandarin Chinese is, they call it Mu Nan Ru. Ru is day, and Mu is mother, Nan is like difficulty or suffering. So they call their birthdays Mom's Suffering Day or Mom's Difficulty Days. And I said, I appreciate the sentiment insofar that it is a reminder to us, you know, the physical pain that our mothers had to go through for us to be born. But then I went on to complain and rant about how I don't know if that is such a good way to think of what the day you were born is about. For one thing, I don't know, I'm not a mother, but I don't think my mother wants to be reminded every year that, hey, guess what? This is the day you suffered so much. Hello, good morning. I was also speaking of this also in the context of how I said, look, in Malaysia, where many of the ethnic Chinese community kind of are considered Buddhist, but increasingly, young people interested in spiritual things are converting to other traditions. And many of them, even among my cousins and all that, have become evangelical Christians. I said, on birthdays, they say, you are God's gift, into the world. You are God's gift, to your parents. Meanwhile, these Buddhists tell you, you are a pain to your parents. You are a pain to your mother. I say, look, Buddhists, how are you going to, respond like, or play a role that is meaningful to people, to young people? I said, please don't do this. Again, I understand, yes, let's not forget, the kindness of our mothers. But I said, I know for sure my mother doesn't want me to call this day, Mom's Suffering Day. I believe, I know my mom, yeah, physically it was very painful, but amazing, like she didn't even know who I was and she had no idea how I would turn out. But I was sure that she was so happy, to greet me that day. So I totally disagree with going around calling today, Mom's Day of Suffering. Yeah, so we can celebrate, and remember our mother's kindness instead of our mother's suffering. Yeah, that how kind, she was. Like really, like me turning up is just like a stranger turning up. That suddenly she and then my father are completely responsible for. But how kind were they, and how mysterious that they were so happy that some random, well, random, so to say, that's in they didn't know me, some person turned up. So remember their kindness. Then from another perspective, I said from the Buddhist perspective of how precious, human life is, then it's also a day to recognize, precious human life is the day that I obtained this precious human life. And so in Chinese, I said, the other day I wrote, I said, oh, I think it was Wei Ting who sent me a birthday wish last night. And I said, yes, let's call today literally sort of a long chain of words, but it's like, difficult to obtain human rebirth. Today has been obtained happiness day. This long, so in Chinese it's like 人生难得今得欢喜日. Right? Difficult to obtain human existence. Today has been obtained happiness day. Even happier if we can now commit ourselves to the Bodhisattva path, the path that leads to both our own happiness and the happiness of others. So anyway, my complaints, my rant over now. Now we can look at Shantideva. So last time we started looking at verse 57, 58, 59, which is a form, a mini 3 verses meant to be contemplated on a regular basis over time. First intellectually, then let that intellectual understanding kind of sink into the heart, and to be able to apply that whenever grasping arises in relation to this body. Then also I said, today we are going to look at more carefully Khenpo Kumpel's commentary on this section, so that we all get a taste of how this is handled in a more kind of scholarly, traditional scholarly way. So we have to remember and appreciate that the scholastic mode of learning the Buddha Dharma, Buddha's teachings, was an important element of Buddhism as it developed in India and then as it went to different places. So the scholastic side has always been important. I would say for two reasons. One, the Buddha himself recommended a method of relating to what he taught that is very similar to what the scholastic tradition champions, which is critical investigation, critical analysis that is not critical analysis, critical reflection on what is being taught, so that you don't just blindly accept. So that is something definitely the Buddha taught, and the Buddha emphasized, and the Buddha recommended that we do. No doubt about that. And this is something I would say quite unique compared to other spiritual traditions. The Buddha actually say we should critically investigate, critically analyze what he has to say. Then the other factor is, of course, because the Buddhist tradition also had to respond to non-Buddhist questions and challenges in India. And so in India, there was a strong intellectual tradition beyond the Buddhist context, that in the Indian context, religion were also conducted in a way, or at least parts of religion were also conducted in a way that in the West would be called philosophy. So you would use critical analysis and critical arguments so there was that part. So one part of why Buddhism developed this scholastic tradition, and this has become a very important element. There were internal reasons, which is what I just talked about. Buddha says, the Buddha said, we should not just blindly accept what he has to say because it won't work, right? We have to actually see, is there any truth to what he has to say about the human condition? So those are the internal reasons. And then there were external reasons. In order for Buddhism to grow and to be respected, Not respected out of ego, but respected so that other people would actually consider, right? So would pay attention to what the Buddha taught. Then Indian Buddhists also had to develop scholastic sophistication for external reasons. For these two reasons, then when Buddhism traveled outside of India and went to other places, this scholastic mode was always part of the tradition in the broader sense. Then when it comes to us, right, how much of that balance should matter to us? I think each of us, we have to think about this. Yeah? Many of us, in this group, we grew up in an educational system where we have been taught to apply critical thinking. So I think in a way, intellectually, we're very fancy, very sophisticated that way. So now we have to figure out how to take in this kind of more scholastic side of the Buddhist tradition in a way that fundamentally, for most of us, we are not, going to be Buddhist teachers, engaging others, but primarily we are approaching these teachings as a way to change our mind, transform our own lives. So we should not forget that the what I call the internal reasons for using critical analysis is more important than the external reasons. So the external reasons are not so relevant to us now, although it's worth thinking about those things, but that is not the primary reason for us. Um, I was thinking one thing I should also say is like, to be careful. Like if there are any of you, who is very excited, about like learning, the scholastic tradition of Buddhism, that you don't get carried away by all the classifications, all the, seemingly very sophisticated, very clear, you feel like, oh, this is so clear, this is so, makes so much sense, and fail to see that in some ways, right, it's so clear, it makes so much sense, in part because you might have internalized a set of assumptions, which is the result of, in a way, kind of indoctrinating yourself with a particular framework, and fail to see that all you have is just a framework. The real work has not yet occurred. I'm speaking from experience. We think, I mean, I don't exactly have like the traditional, like Tibetan Buddhist, what you could call seminary or Shedra training, but I do have a PhD in Buddhist studies, and there are similarities. Of course, there's also great differences, but there are similarities, So you could learn like a system so well that it gives some kind of rather misleading, false security, that, oh, I know, when in fact, all you know is you have replaced, right, one framework with another framework. One set of reference points with another set of reference points. But at the end of the day, these are still reference points. What the Buddha points to is beyond references. And if we don't take that effort, we don't take that effort because sometimes we don't even recognize that, that that's not the destination. There is a further step that we have to take. Then it's easy, to kind of, at some point when this new framework that you have become so comfortable in, when things begin to, get questioned, it can fall apart. Then you wake up and you go, oh my God, I've just replaced one set of beliefs with another set of beliefs. So in this chapter, Shantideva will necessarily address many different systems, both Buddhist systems and non-Buddhist systems. Within Buddhist systems, the so-called Hinayana systems, the so-called Mahayana systems. So he addresses these systems and the positions of these systems, right? But in the end, right, the Buddha did not teach systems. Shantideva, of course, understands that. Shantideva knows that. But his audience is such that he has to speak in the terms that his audience are most interested in, which is these systems. But in the end, the Buddha did not teach systems. Whether it's Madhyamaka system, Abhidharma system, all these systems necessarily, of course, were articulated and developed over time to help bring into focus what the Buddha taught, the profundity of the Buddha, what the Buddha taught. But the Buddha did not teach systems. The Buddha wasn't concerned about, giving a system. The Buddha was concerned about dukkha and the end of dukkha. The Buddha was concerned about how we need to recognize suffering, and then we need to relinquish the cause of suffering. From these 2 points arises what's known as the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths: suffering that is to be recognized, cause of suffering, which is grasping thirst, which is to be abandoned, end of suffering, which is to be experienced, cessation of suffering, which is to be experienced. That's the third noble truth. And then the fourth, the path, the method to the end of suffering, of dukkha, is to be developed. Not developing a system, to be developed within our own experience. Of course, there's an irony here, and a caution, I think, a lesson for us. So Shantideva here in this chapter on wisdom, so he is addressing, right, all the different positions, right, all the different systems. But what he's doing here, as he says, he is like, he says, I'm not interested in systems. He says that, following Nagarjuna's style, he says, I'm not interested in systems. I'm just using what the Buddha taught to help us see the faults of systems. And more importantly, those faults in these systems that reflect some of the basic misunderstandings that we have with regards to the world, with regards to ourselves. So Shantideva says, all I'm doing here is to cut away all these wrong views, all these faults. In fact, he says, what I'm doing is I'm cutting away these views. To cut away these views. Then ironically, later, people are like, oh, I follow the view of Shantideva. And Shantideva is the highest view. He represents, from within the Madhyamaka tradition, he has the superior view of what's known as the consequentialist, Prasangika Madhyamaka, which is higher than the autonomous Madhyamaka, the Swatantrika Madhyamaka people. And so Shantideva, upholds Nagarjuna's highest view. So then you have these Prasangika Madhyamaka people running around feeling very good about their view. It's ironic because Shantideva says, the point is to cut all these views. Not like put a bomb and blow up all these views. Because the result of having blown up is not as important as knowing how to cut, meaning what are the errors that needs to be removed. So you will see, like even like Milarepa, another good example of. So Milarepa comes from a different direction, right? He also was most concerned about seeing suffering and how to end suffering. So famously, he taught many. He taught by way of singing songs, so to say. And then, of course, the scholastic types, started at first, in his own time, the scholastic types did not respect him. Yeah, they say, he's just, this, uneducated yogi that is don't really know what he's talking about. But later, when Milarepa becomes like this kind of spiritual hero of Tibet, then now the scholastic tradition tries to put their scholastic categories on Milarepa. And then they'll find in his songs, and say, oh, look, here Milarepa is singing about the different views. And see, here at the end, Milarepa is a Prasangika Madhyamaka. Oh, see, he is actually one of us. So all of this is about, right? Of course, this can be done in the most innocent way. But often, if you look into it, this is all about reinforcing views about self. My tradition, my view, my lineage, my this, my that, my religion, my dharma. Like, and how all this manifests, it's like, oh, maybe like many of us are, dharma practitioners ourselves, but people around us, they are not. Then we get offended, when we feel like, oh, they're not respecting my religion. They're not respecting my choice. They don't appreciate my practice. My. That's the common denominator, the common element in all of it. My. So we have to be very careful. The relinquishing of views is one of the first steps, of the true kind of spiritual growth. So, and particularly like in the the things to be abandoned on the path. One of the first ones is self-view. So all kinds of views related to self, my, in other words, that's the first thing to cut, So that's one of the first hindrances to overcome. So we have to remember this. So some of the masters, great beings, in the 10th, 11th century in the Tibetan Buddhist context, individuals that we now identify as, part of the Kadampa tradition, which Atisha established, and those figures that we now, call the Kagyu. These two groups were very close at that period, 10th, 11th century. Many of those teachers then, were quite clear, about not getting stuck in the disputation of views, this view, that view, my view, your view, things like that. But of course, many of these individuals themselves did formally study these traditions. So it's not saying don't study them, it's saying know how to use them. That's the main point. Okay, we take a short break, and I promise when we come back, we will look at Khenpo Kumpel's commentary on verses 57, 58, 59.
Wage joare mum, 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 Wage Jware 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 Mum. Wage Jware Mum, 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 Wage Jware Mum. Wage Jware Mum, 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 wage joare mum wage joare 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 wage joare mum wage joare
Okay. So let's read 57, 58, 59. Shantideva, chapter 9. The teeth, the hair, the nails are not the eye. An eye is not the bones or blood. The mucus from the nose and phlegm are not the eye, and neither is it made of lymph or pus. The eye is not the body's grease or sweat. The lungs and liver likewise do not constitute it. Neither are the inner organs eye, and yet, nor yet the body's excrement and waste. The flesh and skin are not eye, and neither are the body's warmth and breath. The cavities within the frame are not the eye, and eye is not accounted for in sixfold consciousness. So these are those three verses. So now let's look at Khenpo Kumpel's commentary on this section. So in Khenpo Kumpel's commentary, these three verses fall under the section, which is the meditation on the emptiness of the innate self. Meaning, he says that this particular three verses is focused on us, on helping us meditate, meaning cultivate the awareness, cultivate the recognition of the emptiness of this innate self, Now, of course, this innate self in reality don't exist. But temporarily, it seems to naturally exist. So innate means that it seems to naturally exist. And what are we talking about? Which is, even when the baby is still in the womb, it already has the sense of self. Without even knowing language yet, it already has a sense of self and therefore self-grasping. Then when a baby is born, without being taught, without being told to do so, without being educated, baby already has this kind of natural sense of I. So here, what these three verses is to help us see that even this seemingly very natural, very innate sense of self is actually illusory, has no basis, only temporarily existing in a unstable way, unreliable way. So, and this is, anyway, yeah, no need to. So I'll read from his commentary. He says, on the basis of the 5 mental and physical skandhas, aggregates, there occurs the thought, I am. So on the basis of these unstable, shifting, changing processes of that are mental and physical, on the basis of that, this feeling, this feeling of I arises. So as beings existing in the, last time we talked about this, as beings existing in the Kamaloka, the world of the senses, our sense of I, this mistaken sense of I, it doesn't arise, without a basis. So it arises on the basis of this. We just call it body, right? Ordinarily, you and me, daily body. But Buddha says what we call body here, not just body, but when we point to here, right? When we say I, like someone says, you, you say, me, right? Me. So we immediately, that's the innate, that's the sense of me. So me, when you point here, Buddha says, this is what's called the 5 skandhas coming together. And the 5 skandhas are not 5 things. Skandhas, the word aggregates, aggregate itself, that word means that which comes together. Aggregation, combination, compounded together. So he says here, this I or self, which is identified with these aggregates, this composition, which in the absence of critical analysis is assumed to exist. Which is right now, lacking the presence of carefully looking. In the absence of that, we just assume, oh, yeah, of course there's an I. So on the basis of this, we assume, of course I exist. So then Khenpo Kupra says, and if that is the case, then this I have to be discoverable, have to be found from within this. Then, so he says, so starting from there, if we assume that, if we think that, so then he says, now we should engage in investigation, in critical analysis, following these 3 verses. So he says, you could ask whether the I is the same or different from our 32 teeth. And even the 32 teeth, he says, we can say, so is the I to be found in the 32 teeth individually or collectively? And it's not enough to say is the I to be found in the 32 teeth or not. He says you should actually think, now when I say I, is this I identical with or different from, say, 32 teeth? He says, if you say it is identical, then this I, then there are implications, or there are consequences. So that's why this later, when again systems and categories are established, it is said that Shantideva's way is called the consequentialist. So there are implications, there are consequences. So he says, if Kemukumbya says, if you think that your eye is identical with your teeth, then the consequence is, the implication is then, this eye is inanimate, because teeth is inanimate, has no consciousness. Not only that, must be impermanent. And not just one thing, but 32 things, because there are 32 teeth. And this eye must cease to exist when one teeth falls out. Or at least, if you think the eye is the 32 teeth, one falls out, you say, now I am 1 of 31 less of an eye. He says, of course, all these consequences, all these implications are absurd. He says, on the other hand, if the self is regarded as distinct from these teeth, why is it that, when you have a toothache, you say, oh, I'm not well. I'm not doing well. Well, if these 32 teeth, is different from I, why do we so naturally, so immediately, so radially, when there's a toothache, you say, oh, I'm not feeling well today. He says, then you can and you should extend the same kind of analysis, the same application to the body's 21,000 hairs. I don't know if he actually counted, but like there are 21,000 hairs at least, and the 20 nails. He says, when you do that, you'll see that they are not this self, this I. And neither is this self the 360 bones of the skeleton. So here he says, from here you extend to what is said in verse 58, 59, and you'll see, right, all these things, whether the identifiable solid parts of this body or the empty cavity, like the inside the lungs, those organs with holes, inner organs like lungs and he says, when you look at all of that, right, and also the bodily byproducts, so which is what's covered in verse 58 and 59, he says, you will see that the self, the self that we kind of naturally but mistakenly, here natural is mistaken, that we naturally or innately but mistakenly think of as self, it cannot be the self. But the power, to me, the power of this argument doesn't it depends on another side too, which is the self that we cherish so much and sometimes agonize over so much also cannot be found apart from all of this. Yeah, so again, the power of this kind of analysis, or the function of this kind of analysis, only works well if you hold both impossibilities together, which is, it is impossible for this I that I cherish so much to be the teeth, the hair, the bones, the skin, the nose, the eye, the ears, the liver, the kidney, one side. But when pain or pleasure arises, how come I have such a strong sense of I? And then to also see how. But apart from this, there also doesn't seem or cannot be found some other I existing somewhere. So holding these two impossibilities together is where the power of this kind of analysis resides.
Sorry, Dr. Lai, can you repeat the last sentence?
Yeah, so holding these two impossibilities together is, I believe, where the power of this kind of meditation, this kind of possibility, or this kind of analysis truly is. That means, it is not this clearly, but it is also not this, the opposite. So then, in a way, it then raises a question: what is it? And in this way, right, this kind of analysis bear resemblance to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, maybe not, but for those, there might be one or two that are familiar. It bears some resemblance, at least in terms of what it gives rise to, the Gong'an practice of the Chan or Zen lineage. Often koans, Gong'an koans in Japanese, koan. Sometimes people call them riddles. They're not riddles to be solved. They are more like tools to bring up a set of contradictions that basically forces us to look at what you can call the subject-object duality, and to hold it there. The tension is what is productive. Summarize. It's not easy. I know. I apologize. Good. Likewise, just as, people make the mistake and think that koans are riddles to be solved, and they think, oh, if I have the teacher's secret notes, right, I can see the answer to all the koans. Oh, yes, no, that's not how it works. In the same way, like, I remember when I was in high school learning algebra, right? Which is terrible. I was traumatized by mathematics. But learning like algebra, problem sets, finding the answer is not what the exercise is. It's proving the set that you have to do. That's where the power is. And likewise, in this kind of analysis that we find here, that Khenpo Kumbel is explaining, that Shantideva is recommending, also there is, people make the mistake of saying very quickly, oh, therefore the self doesn't exist. Like thinking, oh, I got the answer. No. That's not where the power of this analysis comes from. In conclusion, yes, there's no self. No, you have to really work at seeing if there is a self, it has to be either identical with this or separate from this. And really spend time seeing how, but it is not identical with this, but it is also not separate from this. Then what is it? Keeping that pressure cooker of what is it? What is it? That's where this power is. And also then to use it, to use one or the other as necessary and as appropriate. Meaning, when we catch ourselves going, oh, I feel not good, like really right now, before I came back, as I was packing, forgetting how old I am, I just use one hand to try to like close my suitcase, which is like, about 50 pounds, and then I pulled, a muscle here and even thought maybe I popped a rib, a pop, I said, right? oh, then, you know, in the last week, you know, really, in permanence, reminding me, you know, you're getting old, you know. Then you know, if I start to think, you know, I feel bad, you know, then that moment, you know, is when you apply. Wait, what is it? Is the I that muscle? Can it be that? Well, it's not. It's not that. The I cannot be the muscle. So to know, to apply these two reasonings and to keep these two impossibilities present is how they can help to dispel dukkha. It's not about confessing, in English we say, or declaring our allegiance to the Buddhist system and say, well, there's no self, end of story. No, it's applying the analysis in a skillful way that will give us some space between dukkha and us. And then keep doing that, then dukkha can be abandoned, relinquished. So one of the Panchen Lamas, if I remember correctly, many years ago, I studied a section of a text that he wrote. So he said, you know, like this search for the self. So this exercise, verse 57, 58, 59, right? It's an exercising in searching for the self. So he says you have to do this honestly, and not just go through the motions of being a good Buddhist and quickly want to arrive at the conclusion, self doesn't exist. He says it's not to be done that way. Rather, this search for the self has to be done in such a way that it is the most important mission that you have. Meaning, I feel very strongly that I exist, self exists. Then he says, okay, now, if that's the case, where is the self? So he says, you have to look for it. You have to genuinely look for it. You cannot like half-heartedly go, I'm going to go look for the self, but actually I know it doesn't exist. He says, if you do that, then it's not going to work. Then he gave an analogy. He says, it's like someone have lost a yak. Of course, a yak is a very important creature for a Tibetan. So maybe now we can say, it's like someone has lost, it's like when you have lost your mobile, our idam for many of us, that we have lost our mobile phone. You have to search for it as if, you have searched for the self as if you have lost your mobile phone. You're not just going to like, go, oh, wait, where's my mobile? Oh, actually, lost. No, you search high and low. You search everywhere. You have to search and search and search. So he says, you go into the valley, up into the mountains because you have lost this yak. You're not just going to, open the door of your house and look outside and go, oh, no yak. Okay, the yak doesn't exist. You search, and you search. Then you might ask, wait, is there a point where you stop? Don't worry. Yes, you can stop. When do you stop? You stop when grasping after this object has been diminished as a result for the search of this self, of this object or this self. Then when you stop there, if you're doing a formal meditation session, then you can divide these two parts, the searching part, into what is known as analytical meditation. And through the analytical meditation, you come to the conclusion, and you cannot rush that, as I said. You come to a conclusion, as in you are satisfied, at least temporarily, if not ultimately. You're satisfied that the self cannot exist in the way that I habitually think it exists. That is, either as part of this or separate from this. That kind of self is not possible its existence is not possible. When you arrive at that, then grasping stops. Then the next part is to rest in that understanding. Rest in that understanding. That kind of a self that I have habitually and addictively, more important, craved, cannot exist in the way that I have craved it, in the way that I have imagined it. Then you rest. And that is called resting meditation. Analytical followed by resting. Or placement, sometimes called. So you place your mind in equipoise, in this evenness, and you rest there. This rest is not going to sleep rest, okay? The mind is brightly under the influence of the lack of this self, and then just content to rest in that understanding. So just as a side note, as a footnote, I think many of us are familiar with the category of Shamatha and Vipassana, right? Shamatha, calm abiding meditation, Vipassana, special insight, higher understanding, as the two aspects of Buddhist meditative training. Right? So normally how this is explained and how this is cultivated is they say, you start with Shamatha, settling the mind, and then when the mind is settled, insight, you develop insight. But in this, what I just talked about, you can see how it's actually kind of reversed. You begin with analysis leading to insight, and then you rest, or you let that insight sink in. Right? So analytical followed by placement. So what this shows us is that, again, we should not be, we should understand the categories, the differences, the procedure, the general procedure, but we should not get fixated and inflexible and say, oh, definitely have to be shamatha, then vipassana. No, there are many, many kind of approaches. And in this case is you use analytical to give rise to insight, understanding about the impossibility of this self, and then you let that insight, that realization sink in through what's called placement meditation. So there's more to Khenpo Kumpel's commentary, which we will continue this Saturday. Yeah, so you all have a good day, good evening. Let's now do dedication of Bodhichitta. Changchu Sem Cho Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gyuche Ge Ba Nyam Pa Me Ba Gong Ne Gong Du Bel War Shu. Yeah.
Good morning and happy birthday.
Thank you.
We went to sing in different languages and versions. Also, I want to say thank you for giving us the Dharma in this practical and concise way that we can understand. Please remain with among us for a long time and keep turning the wheel of Dharma. So now, please enjoy. Jasper, could you help me in a Malay version, then waiting Chinese version, Antonio Chapina version, then I will lead the Mexican version, please.
Jasper is asleep, maybe.
No, I suppose sing in Malay version, right? Selamat Hari Jadi, Selamat Hari Jadi, Selamat Hari Jadi, Selamat Hari Jadi. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you.
Waiting, could you help me in Chinese version, please?
Dr. Lai is Cantonese, right?
Yes, yes. Oh, yes.
祝你福壽與天齊，慶賀你生辰快樂，年年都有今日，歲歲都有今朝，恭喜你，恭喜你。
Thank you.
Antonio and Guatemalan people, could you help me with the Chapina version?
Feliz cumpleaños a ti. Feliz cumpleaños a ti. Feliz cumpleaños, Dr. Lai.
Feliz cumpleaños, Dr. Lai.
Feliz cumpleaños a ti.
Ahora,
Ya queremos pastel, aunque sea un pedacito, pero queremos pastel. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50.
Let the party begin. Okay, the mariachi band is going to turn up now.
estas son las mañanitas
Mañanitas que canta el rey de
cumpleaños
despertado del cielo, mira, amaneció, la luna ya
Feliz cumpleaños.
Feliz
cumpleaños.
Gracias.
Felicidades, Dr. Lai. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Feliz cumpleaños, Dr.
US
Lai.
version, the most commonly version. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Dr. Lai.
Happy
birthday to you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Lai. Happy birthday.
Julian Moore.
Yeah, the day to remember the kindness of our mothers.
Yes. Poor mothers.
Kindness and the happiness of mothers. So for your birthday, all of you, may your life make your mothers happy. So that should be our goal.
Hi, Mom.
And then in the bigger one, remember, right? May mother sentient beings be happy that you were born.
Ay, oíste el happy birthday.
Right? So may mother sentient beings happening. So we have to try to live our lives so that when it comes time for our birthday, mother sentient beings are happy, are glad. Yeah, it's a much better way to think about today. Or whenever birthdays turn up.
Have a happy day, Dr. Lai.
Thank you.
Feliz cumpleaños, Dr. Lai.
Yeah, some of you might notice, I purposely turn off posting on Facebook.
Yes.
Any notification that my birthday is happening. It's like Facebook has basically hijacked everything, So my little protest against that. Yes, of course, I enjoy hearing from all of you, so don't misunderstand. But just my little symbolic protest. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Dr. Lai. Happy
Feliz
birthday.
cumple.
Many blessings
Adiós al
and
Dr.
happy
Lai.
birthday.
Dígale
Thank
adiós.
you.
Happy birthday, Dr. Lai.
Happy birthday.
Bye.
Feliz cumpleaños. Cumpleaños, Dios.